Story 1. Am I the a-hole for moving my son into a rental apartment after finding out that his dad's been canceling his job applications? My son, Aiden, 23, moved back in with us upon graduating college as my husband wanted. My husband's original plan was to have Aiden live with us for free, but stay home and help with his disabled younger brother, 16. Aiden started complaining about needing money and wanted to find a job. My husband was against this and even offered to double his allowance, but Aiden was growing tired of staying at home. So he began looking for jobs here and there for over a year, but none of his job applications came through. He'd just apply and they never get back to him. We were confused by this till recently. I found out that my husband was behind all the job applications being canceled. He waited till Aiden applied, then he proceeds to call the application by impersonating him and using his email. I blew up at him for this, but his justification is that he's just trying to make sure that our younger son is cared for by Aiden, and said that Aiden has been a big help and him getting a job will affect his care for his brother. I went ahead and rented an apartment for Aiden and told him to stay there till he finds a job and starts paying for it himself. Aiden was hurt upon knowing what his dad did. My husband was livid when he found out. He called me unhinged and said that I was separating the boys and teaching Aiden to become selfish and care more about a job than family. He also said it was a huge decision for me to rent an apartment without even running it with him. He has been giving me hell about it and calling me a terrible mother for encouraging Aiden to be selfish and self-centered. He said I needed to see and understand why he did what he did. Edit, a few things to mention. My husband says that since he and I have health issues, then we could use Aiden's help. 2, when I suggested outside help, my husband refused, saying he won't ask anything from anybody and that his son is his problem and nobody else's. 3, I used money from our joint account to pay for the rental apartment. My husband said it was wrong and that I was a major waste of money since we deal with medical bills constantly. Look, there is nothing wrong with, grown-up kids staying with adult parents or having multi-generational homes or anything like that where you take care of one another. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that that is honestly a thing that a lot of us could benefit from and is kind of healthy. Like, keep your family and your loved ones close if they all want to be. That's kind of the big thing here. Aiden finished college and clearly wanted to use that degree, wanted to go out and get a job. That is what Aiden was after. And the father was standing in the way of that, just like, no, he needs to stay home and be part of the family, be with the family. Like, no, you can't make that decision for him. If Aiden wanted to just be home and get an allowance and have his job be basically taking care of his brother, that's great. That's fine. That is Aiden's choice. But it is Aiden's choice. And to take that away from him is manipulative and wrong. I mean, this father was doing it by lying and impersonating him. And I don't blame Aiden for being hurt. And I definitely don't blame this mom for doing what she could to get Aiden out of there so he could actually pursue what he wanted to. This father is the one that is just being unhinged and very unreasonable. You can't force this stuff on your adult children. I'm sorry. Story 2. My dad felt my savings should go to my brother. So this happened a couple of years ago, but it still just hurts. My dad and I have never really seen eye to eye. He grew up with no sisters and an awful mother figure, and none of his friends have daughters, only sons. I don't blame him for struggling to raise a girl when he had absolutely no reference point, but he didn't need to show blatant favoritism towards my brother. I've always been the black sheep a little. My parents and younger brother have always been this nice little trio. My brother is a mummy's boy, but daddy dotes on him regardless. He's 4 years younger than me. I'm 18 and he's 14. I've struggled to find my place in the family. Even my standing as to which sibling I am isn't certain because my dad accidentally impregnated a girl at 19, had my half-brother, and I was born 14 years later. My older brother was enough in my life that I don't feel like the oldest child, but not enough to feel like the middle. I'm just dad's retrial at parenting, and my brother is the beneficiary of all his practice. Now, aside from that little rant, the actual story. My brother and I are very musical. I play a multitude of instruments, he just plays saxophone, and he's good, always has been. He suffered classic younger sibling syndrome. We were in a much better financial position when I began playing clarinet. I got a really good beginner/intermediate model that I still play today. When he started about 4 years later, things had gotten tight, so he had to rent his from the local concert band, and it wasn't great. Originally, it was fine because my parents didn't want to invest in something he might not commit to, but he did and loved it. At this point, I was 15, and I'd been working for 2 years at a local sports club, earning less than minimum wage because I was underage, working my butt off and saving a pretty hefty percentage of my income. My father, who felt responsible for my job since he knew the owner, but I'd actually gotten the job myself, decided he was entitled to my savings, about $500 at the time. His exact words were, "We could use your savings to buy your brother a better saxophone." God, it crushed me. First of all, you cannot get a sax better than the one he has for only $500. Secondly, what kind of father asks one child to give up practically 2 years of work for another? It made me feel like he had more pride or hope for his son than his daughter's savings should contribute towards it, even though at the time I was saving for a student-level clarinet and he knew that. He never offered to pay the money back or anything, and thankfully, after I asked Mom what she thought of it, she lost her mind. It was never brought up again, though he has asked for my savings since then, and I've said no. Can't wait to move out next year. Edit, so I should clarify a couple of things clear. My father didn't actually take the money. Mom shut that situation down real quick, but it didn't stop him from asking and trying to manipulate me into giving them up for a long time. I live in New Zealand and my accounts have been in my name since I was 13. My parents have just as much right to them as the stranger across the street. Absolute zero. Credit isn't really a thing here, so that's not an issue either. Can't believe all the attention this got, and thanks for all the advice. Edit 2. I have half a year of high school left, and the next year I'm moving 8 hours away to university, so that's where my savings are going. I can't move out now. Also, to explain the minimum wage situation in New Zealand, minimum wage is $17.70, and it tends to go up every year. However, you don't have to pay minimum wage to employees under the age of 16. You can pay them whatever you want. I started on $10 an hour at age 13, and nearly a year into the job, I went up to $14.25, as that was the current minimum wage, and that's where my wage stayed until I turned 16, even when the minimum wage rose. Edit 3. Don't appreciate the tax I'm receiving about how much I had in savings after 2 years. That isn't what this post is about. Okay, first off, who is attacking this person on having $500 in savings after 2 years? For someone who is, under 16 and going to school and doing band and all this other stuff, they probably don't have a whole ton of time to work, so I imagine they're not getting all the money in the world, and probably some of the money they're getting, they are spending on, activities with friends and stuff. So folks gotta chill out there. Don't come at him with that. She's not working full time, okay? But knowing that you were saving up for your own thing with all this work that you're doing yourself, for the father to even ask is just kind of gross. I don't think it's wrong for parents to maybe ask for help from a kid if the family really falls on hard times. Ideally, that doesn't happen. A child should not have to be acting as an adult, but hard times happen. It's understandable. But to ask for that money to buy a different instrument for one of the younger kid when the older one is saving it up for themselves and their own thing, that's just it's putting them in such a bad spot. No matter what she does, if she gives the money, now she's not getting what she's worked 2 years for. And if she doesn't get the money, she's made to feel bad. Don't put that kind of pressure on your kids, parents. Not for something like that. Story 3. Make my life difficult for nearly a decade? I'll make you look like an idiot. When I first left home to go to university, my parents co-signed a mortgage for me on an apartment-style condominium in a small Canadian city. This was 20 years ago, so it came in at a whopping $52,000. They thought that this was a much better and economical choice than trying to find an apartment and deal with landlords. I loved the idea and moved into my new home. The building was almost entirely populated by 65-plus crowd. It was small and only had 24 units split into 2 halves. I had a basement condo. It was a nice place, nothing fancy, but amazing for a student. I was young, 19, but I was quiet, kept to myself, and didn't do the whole party thing. I got along with most of my neighbors. I'd help them out moving heavy things or carrying groceries upstairs. I was acutely aware of the age gap and the general image of a university student, so I made sure to be just an all-around great guy to avoid conflict. The one person I could never see eye to eye with was my upstairs neighbor. For a 70-year-old woman that couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, she walked like a damned elephant. She'd have gospel music on her TV at max volume at 5 a.m. on Sundays. She'd make remarks about that damn kid whenever something was left out of place. She even went so far as to accuse me of breaking into her car and making a police statement saying she saw me do it. Unfortunately for her, I was out of the country on an internship at the time, but she still persisted being a pain in my butt. I tried to approach her about the TV issue, and her response was to make sure that it was no longer just Sunday. After a couple of years of attempted diplomacy, it was clear that nothing I did would make things better. Others in the building probably knew she had it out for me, but why would this adorable little old lady try to lie and get me thrown out of the building by the condo board? She tried at least 11 times while I lived there. 7 years into my time living there, I was at my job with an ambulance service just north of the city. I got called to a shooting. Guy shot his neighbor in a land dispute. The neighbor survived, but there was of course going to be a police investigation. The investigating officers called me to get a statement and offered to just come over to do it rather than have me travel. One of them was a constable I'd worked with quite a bit, so I said sure. We set a time for about an hour after I get home from work. I was just getting out of the shower when they buzzed to get in the building. I said, "Come in, I'll be out in a sec." I hit the door buzzer and quickly grabbed some pants and a shirt. I heard them come in and then walk upstairs. As I'm trying to throw on clothes, I hear them knock on my upstairs neighbor's door. They introduced themselves as being from the RCMP Major Crimes Division and that they were looking for me. Balls. She says, "Oh, he lives downstairs. What do you want with him?" They thanked her and informed her that they couldn't say as it was an active investigation. My heart sank. But then I had a thought. It only took about 15 minutes to do my statement, and they went on their way. And then the fun began. I knew the rumor mill would be starting. She would tell everyone that would listen that Major Crimes was looking for me and that I must be some sort of criminal. I decided to see where this went. Pretty soon I'm getting side eyes in the hallway. Neighbors are steering clear of me, so I know she's been talking. Turns out I've been arrested for robbery and kidnapping and must be out on bail, according to her. I found this out when one of the neighbors who was on the condo board showed up with a letter demanding an explanation and threats to have me kicked out. I asked him what this was all about, and he said, well, Linda, not her name, sent us a letter about what had happened, and we had to have an emergency board meeting because people don't feel safe with you here. I said that per the bylaws of the condo board, before any action could be taken, I could request a meeting to review and provide a defense. Linda was on the board, so I knew she'd be there. They set a date for a week from then, but I was given a caution that it didn't look good for me and that I would have to do a lot of explaining. The meeting day comes. Linda is sitting smugly looking at me. The other board members are giving me dirty looks. The board president asks what I have to say in my defense. I stand and quietly distribute a letter on an RCMP letterhead, signed by the regional superintendent that says, Mr. Zen Medic is not under suspicion of any crimes, past or current, and has not been arrested, detained, or questioned as a suspect in any criminal matter. His duties as a paramedic will often require him to make statements in regards to ongoing investigation, and in this instance, on date, investigators had gone to obtain a statement about an ongoing investigation for which he was professionally involved. At no time did the members discuss, disclose, or in any way indicate that he had any involvement in any wrongdoing. I'm deeply saddened by the necessity of this letter, and we will be reopening an investigation into a previous incident regarding false statements made against him. You could tell when people read and understood it. The dirty looks shifted from me to Linda. She exclaimed that it must be a forgery. She witnessed me being let off in handcuffs. She pleaded that they should believe her. It didn't help her. I stood and addressed the board and outlined the years of abuse and harassment, including the false accusation of break and enter to a vehicle. I informed the board that, on advice of my lawyer, that I do not discuss the matter further with any member of the board, as Linda being part of it and using her position for the purposes of harassment opened the board as a whole to litigation, and I was still weighing my options. The next day I had a knock on my door. The board president had informed me that Linda was removed from the board and that she was given warning about her conduct and that any further harassment could result in proceedings to have her removed from the building. She also had a visit from police with a summons for providing a false statement and obstructing a peace officer. She had to attend court. She pled guilty to both and was given a suspended sentence and 1-year condition not to harass, threaten, or intentionally inconvenience me in any way. If she abided by her conditions, she would receive an absolute discharge, meaning it would be removed from her record like it never happened. I moved to another province before her year was up, but for a brief period of time, I actually got to sleep in on Sunday mornings. You know, I am a self-professed lover of the elderly. I think the vast majority of elderly folks that I meet and interact with, they're wonderful. They have these great stories to tell. So many of them have this beautiful, positive outlook on life. I think because my grandma was a beacon of light. My great aunt is delightful and wonderful. I generally see a lot of elderly people who live on that long can be just so kind and wonderful, but then you get the ones that seem to be staying alive and hanging on by spite and bitterness alone. And I just can't understand living like that. Just being such an angry, spiteful person. And I will say sometimes it can be due to deteriorating mental conditions, and I have absolute sympathy for that. But once it starts affecting other people, and like this lady was doing, just, making this person's life not miserable, but just, rallying against them despite evidence, it's like, I don't know if you're this way because of a deteriorating mental condition or because you're just a spiteful, mean person. But either way, friggin' stop it, okay? Like, because if you stop it, you'll be happier. Other people will be happier. It's just that easy. Story 4. Kid pulls a knife out and threatens me, then goes crying to her mother when he can't hurt me. A few things first. 1, this is my first post here. 2, I'm Finnish. English isn't exactly my first language. And 3, formatting? Never heard of it. Anyways, on to the story, I guess. Edit, there's a typo in the title. It's supposed to say his instead of her, so to clarify, entitled kid is a boy and the main leader, master, whatever, is a woman. So, this happened like 9 to 10 years ago when I was 7 or 8 years old. I was a scout back then and a part of a group which was, for the most part, filled with friends and people I knew. I was popular because back then I was a social and easygoing. I was friends with everyone and everyone was friends with me and everyone else. But, as always, there's one exception to this. In all honesty, entitled kid was a goddamn dumb butt. He would yell, he would fight, he would make others cry. He did what he wanted. Back then, I thought he was special ed, and that's why I tried to be friends with him, but nope. Later in life, he went to the same high school. I learned that he was just dumb. Like I said, that kid was a dumb butt and would always be trying to get into fights with everyone. People were sick of it, and in time, so was I. I don't remember clearly what the bastard did to deserve a shouting from me. He was probably harassing girls or hitting boys, but I effing flipped on him. Now, at this time, he didn't take out his knife or begin to cry. Instead, he just stopped shouting and stopped whatever the hell he was doing. For the rest of the day, he would just sit at the back of our cabin and just stare at me, menacingly. So, let's skip a week ahead in time. It was the next scout session, don't know what else to call it, and things were going well. We were doing something time-consuming, so everyone's attention was at the thing they were doing, whatever that was. Entitled kid, of course, wasn't doing anything, and instead he decided it was better to run around the cabin. Scoutmaster/leader tried her best to stop the madness, but that only fueled entitled kid's rampage. While on his rampage, it didn't take long for him to find the door to the log cabin that was next to the main cabin, and when he did, well, crap hit the fan hard. I was sitting next to the cabin, and I could hear everything he did and said there clearly. Entitled kid, "Oh my!" he started whispering from the log cabin. "Hey, Joel!" Me. "Come here for a sec." At first I thought, what the hell is he doing now? But as I soon became curious, he wouldn't stop whispering, and I kinda wanted to know what the bugger had found. So, like stupid goddamn kid I was, I went there. Me. "Yeah, what is it?" Entitled kid, "I got something to show you." After a bit of searching, I found him at the back of the cabin. Now at this time, I thought he was going to apologize for being a D to everyone, and I was quite ecstatic. I knew this would be a story I would milk the crap out of. Something to brag to my friends. I was so intimidating that he apologized to me. Well, I got a story out of it, but not the one I was hoping. Me. "What you got there, buddy?" His back was turned against me, and I didn't see what he was hiding or doing. After I asked him what he was doing, he turned around. "You see this, Joel?" I couldn't see what he had in his hand, but I saw his twisted grin. "I can't see it. Could you bring it closer?" "Sure." And now I saw it. A dull red handle knife. "Do you see it now, Joel?" Now at this point I said something along the lines of, "Oh crap," or "What the F," and booked it out of there with the effer laughing maniacally behind me. I ran out of the log cabin and into the main cabin and tripped. This diverted the leader's attention, who now noticed that entitled kid was gone and that I was on the cabin floor panicking. "Leader, What's wrong, Joel? Where's entitled kid? Me. It's entitled kid, that wanker's got a knife. Yep, I said wanker. That one I remember vividly. Leader. What? Me. He's trying to gut me. It took a moment for the leader to realize what was happening, but when she did, she ran into the log cabin, fuming. My friend came closer and asked me what had happened, but before I could answer them, I heard the leader scream at entitled kid. What makes you think it's okay to threaten someone with a knife? I wasn't. I was just showing it. Well, what makes you think you have any right to hold one without a supervisor? You could have not only hurt yourself, you could have hurt Joel. I swear Get out of here. Go outside and wait for your mom to come pick you up. She then came back into the main cabin and told one of the other leaders to look after us. She then went outside with entitled kid and waited for the mother to come pick the little devil up. Now, according to what I had heard, the leader tell the others after this incident, the mother was effing furious. A complete and utter entitled mother who tried to tell the leader that I was probably the aggressor and that I was a goddamn son of a bitch. At the time, I laughed at this with my friends, but had I known she would come for me the next week, I wouldn't have been laughing. In order for you guys to understand better where me and my friends were when this happened, here is the main cabin. After a week after the incident, me and my friends were on top of the bridge, you can see it in front of the building. We were effing around, doing dumb stuff, playing tag, stuff like that, when suddenly entitled mom shows up. The conversation goes something like this. Which one of you is Joel? Here, ma'am. You're the one who bullied my darling. What? I then noticed entitled kid on the back seat bawling his eyes out. Oh, you're entitled kid's mom. Yeah, he tried to slice me with a knife. He would never. She then went on to list some positive things about him, which seemed pretty BS to me and my friends. He's a gentleman, yet he harassed little girls. He's great at school, yet he couldn't be bothered to pay attention for a single second. That, and he was an F&D student in high school, so he's got more friends than any of you. Yet he had somehow become an outcast in our scout group. I honestly got bored at her rambling and went back to playing with my friends. Some of them kept shouting at her, others ignored her. One of my friends, a girl I'd known since kindergarten, straight up roasting this 30-year-old woman. I can't remember what she shouted, but I remember entitled mom's reaction. Shut up, you bee! This ain't none of your business! Now, this didn't stop my friend. In fact, it fueled her rage even more. Knowing what kind of woman her mother was, this didn't surprise me one bit. As time went on, one of the leaders noticed the commotion and came to check what's going on. Entitled mom noticed this and got out of there fast. After the leader asked us what had happened and we told him, he went and told the main leader and she was furious. She went and straight up banned entitled kid, a ban which was lifted just 3 years ago in 2016 when entitled kid wanted back into the scout group. My career as a scout had already come to an end in 2011, so it didn't bother me until I started it again in the autumn of 2016 and had to cope with the dumb butt again. The sad thing here is it sounds like this entitled kid has some problems. I don't know exactly what it would be. I'm not going to venture a guess, but it sounds like he is dealing with issues and has a mom that isn't helping things at all. I don't understand these. Well, I mean, I kind of understand these parents who just want to be like, no, my child's an angel. They're wonderful. They'll never do anything wrong. Like, you want to be on your kid's side. But when your kid is clearly in the wrong and misbehaving and all this stuff, you're not helping. You're enabling in the worst way. And I know that you probably feel bad and you don't want to punish them. But when you enable a kid like this, they're just going to get worse and worse. And you're doing them absolutely no favors for later in life. This is the kind of stuff that as they develop, it's going to stick with them. And he's going to go from being an entitled kid to being an entitled adult. And just impossible for people to deal with. And it will be so much harder to undo what this entitled mom is doing by enabling all of this. It makes me sad, honestly, because there's probably a good kid in there that could be brought out with some therapy and some help and some structure, but this mom just isn't giving it, apparently, and it's a shame. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.